Welcome to Echoes of Ihsan, the show where we explore the beauty and wisdom found within Islamic traditions. And today, we're embarking on a deep dive, folks,
Yeah,
into Sunan Abu Dawud, Book 25, Dialects and Readings of the Qur'an.
right.
I think a lot of times we think of the Qur'an as like this fixed text, unchanging.
Yeah.
But when you really look at these hadiths, it paints a very different picture, really.
It's really captivating, I think, when you consider that the Quran wasn't revealed as a bound book, right? I
Right.
mean, this was revealed over 23 years, verse by verse.
Yeah.
And it was, initially preserved through memorization
Oh.
and oral transmission by the Prophet's companions. Think about the
No.
dedication.
That's mind-boggling.
It really is.
When you think about this sacred text being entrusted to human memory
Mm.
and passed down through generations, all before it was, compiled in the written form.
Exactly. And, Arabic, just like any other language, has dialects, right? And it has regional pronunciations.
Mhm.
So as the Quran spread, throughout the Arabian Peninsula and beyond, different reading styles emerged. And these variations weren't seen as errors. They
Right.
were seen as like beautiful reflections of the richness of the language, right?
Yeah,
And the diversity of the early Muslim community.
I like that. It's like a tapestry,
It is.
woven with threads of different colors,
Mm-hmm.
different textures,
Right.
each one contributing to the overall beauty
Yeah,
and complexity of the design.
exactly.
So let's unravel some of these threads. There are some really captivating stories in this book,
Yeah.
like Hadith 3959. This one tells the story of a man reciting the Qur'an at night, and his voice was so beautiful that it reminded the prophet of verses he had nearly forgotten.
It's really a testament to the power of that oral tradition.
Wow.
It wasn't just memorization, just kind of rote memorization.
Yeah.
It was the beauty of the recitation could trigger a memory, right?
Right.
It could deepen an understanding, and it could even connect people across time and space. So that man's recitation, it became like this bridge between the revelation and the prophet's own memory.
That's amazing.
It really is.
It's like, when you think about it, it makes you wonder if there are echoes of those recitations still resonating somewhere,
Mhm.
waiting to spark a forgotten memory, maybe within us.
Yeah.
I was also really, really interested in Hadith 3962,
Okay.
which delves into these very subtle differences in pronunciation.
Yeah.
And it mentions how the phrase la tasibana, like do not think,
Right.
was sometimes recited as la tasabana.
Yeah, it might
Mhm.
seem like a minor detail.
Right.
But, even a small shift in vowels can carry like layers of meaning. Think
Yeah.
about it. Just a simple change in pronunciation could highlight a particular aspect of a verse, emphasize a certain interpretation, or even create like a different emotional resonance for the listener.
Right. It's like, language is always evolving. It's a living, breathing thing.
Mhm.
And Arabic, with its, complex grammar
Right.
and rich vocabulary, offers so much flexibility. It's just fascinating to think about how, those subtle changes
Yeah.
might have enriched the understanding of the Quran, especially among those early Muslims.
Absolutely. And that's really why the role of scholars became so critical.
Yeah.
They meticulously studied these different readings, they debated their meaning, and they really ensured that this whole tapestry of oral tradition was preserved, for future
It
generations.
was almost like they were weaving like a safety net around the Quran,
Yeah.
making sure that no thread of his message was lost.
Mhm.
Okay, let's shift gears just a little bit and talk about Hadith 3960.
Okay.
This one connects a real-life event with the revelation of a verse in the Quran.
Right.
It's a story about a missing red velvet cloth
Oh.
and accusations of theft leveled against the prophet.
Wow.
Yeah.
This hadith it's really a powerful example of how the Quran interacted with, the lived experiences of the early Muslims. It
Yeah.
wasn't just this like collection of abstract principles. It provided guidance and clarification in response to real world challenges. So in this case, the accusation against the prophet led to the revelation of a very specific verse, and no prophet could ever be false to his trust.
It's really incredible, this affirmation of the prophet's trustworthiness,
Yeah.
delivered at a moment where his integrity was being questioned.
Mm-hmm.
You can almost like feel the weight of that revelation, the sense of like relief and vindication it must have brought.
It also kind of speaks to this broader theme in the Quran, I think. The importance of trust and accountability, right?
Right.
Especially for those in leadership positions.
Yeah.
The prophet's example serves as this model for leaders, reminding them that their actions must always be in line with their words.
Yeah.
And that, upholding trust is paramount.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
It does.
Like, how would we respond if our own integrity was challenged?
Yeah.
Would we live up to that standard of trustworthiness? I think it's these real-life examples that are woven into the fabric of the Quran that really make its message, it just makes it so relatable, so powerful. It's not this distant, abstract text.
Right.
It's really a guide for us for navigating, the complexity of our own human experience.
It shows how the Quran's teachings were really grounded in the reality of everyday life.
Right.
Addressing issues like trust and leadership and social responsibility.
It's the stories that make it come alive.
It really does.
Demonstrating how these principles can be applied to even the most challenging situations.
Yeah.
And that's really where I think the hadiths become so invaluable.
They are.
Right? They illuminate these connections between the verses and the lived experiences, of the prophet and his companions. They bridge this gap between the divine revelation and our human understanding.
Right.
Making the Qur'an's wisdom more accessible and applicable to our own lives.
They're like these windows, right?
Yeah.
Into a time when the Quran was like this living, breathing force, right? Shaping communities, offering guidance, inspiring people. And, within these hadiths, we find stories not just about the prophet, but also, about ordinary men and women who encountered these verses, who wrestled with their meanings, who sought to live by these teachings.
It's a rich tapestry,
Yeah.
Filled with all these fascinating details and really profound insights. But, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's take a closer look at a few more of these stories, see what other gems we can uncover.
Okay.
There's one in particular, number 3965, that focuses on, that verse, eye for an eye. But it doesn't just, repeat the verse.
Yeah.
It actually offers this glimpse into the context surrounding it.
Yeah, so Hadith 3965 and 3966, actually, they give these different versions, right,
Okay.
of the text that surrounds the verse eye for an eye.
Okay.
One version uses the phrase, alaynu bilain,
Right.
while the other says an-nafsa bin nafsi, while aynu bilain.
Okay.
So it might seem like a small difference, but it highlights how even the placement of words within a sentence could change our understanding.
It's like a puzzle, isn't it?
It is.
Each piece contributes to the overall picture. And in this case, these subtle variations just remind us that the Quran isn't just this collection of isolated verses.
Right.
Right? It's this very carefully crafted text where every word, every phrase has its place and has its purpose.
And the fact that all these different readings were preserved and transmitted, right? It tells us that this early community, they valued this nuance. Yeah.
They understood that the Quran couldn't be reduced to just this one-size-fits-all interpretation.
It's almost like they were acknowledging the limitations of human language.
Yeah.
Recognizing that no single reading could fully encompass the depth and the complexity of that divine message.
Right.
So what do you think? Do these variations challenge our assumptions, about how the Quran was understood in those early years? It seems to me that it wasn't about finding this one right way of doing things, but it was about appreciating the beauty and the validity of multiple approaches.
I think you're right on. You're hitting on something really important.
Yeah.
These variations weren't seen as contradictions or, as errors. They were seen as reflections of the dynamism of that oral tradition. It wasn't about, rigidly adhering to like a single fixed recitation.
Yeah.
It was about embracing that diversity and recognizing the inherent flexibility that the Arabic language really has.
Right.
Each reading could offer like a unique insight, right?
A different shade of meaning that contributed to this like richer and more, multifaceted understanding of the message.
That's beautiful. It's like looking at a diamond from different angles, right? Each facet reflecting a different aspect of its brilliance.
Yeah.
And I think this idea of, these multiple readings is even further emphasized in Hadith 3967, which tells, the story of a companion reciting a verse to Abdullah ibn Umar only to be corrected, on his pronunciation.
Hmm.
What's really interesting is that this correction is based on how the companion had heard the prophet recite it.
Right. It underscores the importance of like lineage and authenticity
Right.
in the transmission of the Quran. It wasn't just, correcting grammar or pronunciation in a vacuum. It
Right.
was about preserving that authentic way in which the prophet conveyed this message, ensuring that his voice, his intonation, his understanding, it continued to resonate through the generations.
It speaks volumes, about the
Yeah.
respect and the reverence they had for the prophet,
Mhm.
and this deep desire to safeguard his legacy. They understood that the Quran wasn't just a text. It was this living word.
Yeah.
It was imbued with the spirit of the prophet himself, and this emphasis on seeking knowledge from credible sources, learning from those who had direct experience. It aligns so beautifully with this Islamic emphasis on knowledge and learning.
It also reminds us that the Quran is not just, a book to be read. It's a tradition to be lived.
Yeah.
It's a practice to be embodied. We're not just, meant to memorize these words, but to, seek out those who can guide us, who can help us to understand, like the nuances, the context, and really the deeper meanings that are woven into this divine revelation.
It's a humbling thought,
It is.
to recognize that we are part of this chain
Mm-hmm.
that stretches back, centuries,
Mm.
a chain that's been entrusted with carrying this precious legacy forward.
And that's a responsibility we shouldn't take lightly.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. So, speaking of those who carried this legacy forward, Hadiths 3969 and 3970, both of these feature Ubay ibn Ka'b,
Okay.
one of the most renowned reciters of the Quran during the Prophet's time,
Yeah.
known for having this, this really beautiful and moving recitation style, one that really captured people's hearts and minds.
It's fascinating that even within Ubay's recitation, there were like these subtle variations.
Yeah.
Hadith 3969 mentions the verse, say, in the bounty of Allah and in his mercy, in that let you rejoice.
Mm-hmm.
While Hadith 3970, it provides like a slightly longer version.
Okay.
Say, in the bounty of Allah and in his mercy, in that let you rejoice, that is better than the wealth you hoard.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even the most skilled reciters,
Yeah.
those who were, closest to the prophet, those who were steeped in that tradition,
Right.
they had their own unique styles, right?
Mhm.
And their own interpretations. It speaks to the, dynamism, right? And the fluidity of the Quran, its
Yeah.
ability to resonate with different individuals, different communities in ways that were, unique and meaningful.
And it also highlights that the Quran wasn't just, a text that was to be memorized, but it was a living word,
Yeah.
meant to be experienced and internalized.
Right.
The way that it was recited, the emotions that it evoked, the connection it forged between the reciter and the listener, it all contributed to this transformative power.
And that's something I think we can all strive for.
Yeah.
To move beyond simply just reading the words on the page, right? And to allow the Quran to touch our hearts, to awaken our souls, and, really inspire us to live lives that are more meaningful and more purposeful.
These hadiths really offer this fascinating window, into those early days of Islam and the importance that was placed on preserving the Quran's message in all its richness and its diversity.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that the Quran isn't this, monolithic, unchanging text, but it's this living tapestry woven from these threads of revelation and recitation and interpretation.
And as we go further into this collection of hadiths, we're going to encounter even more stories, more insights, more glimpses into the hearts and minds of those who first encountered this divine revelation.
I'm excited to continue. But before we wrap up this first part of our deep dive,
Mm-hmm.
there's one more hadith, I think, that deserves our attention.
Okay.
It's Hadith 3971, a seemingly simple story about Azma, the daughter of Yazid, hearing the prophet reciting the verse, he acted unrighteously, innahu amila ghayra salih.
Yes. So this hadith, despite being so brief, it really speaks volume.
It does.
It reminds us that even the prophet himself, engaged in the practice of reciting the Quran and reflecting upon it. It wasn't just something that he, preached to others. It was an integral part of his own spiritual life.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful reminder that the Quran is a source of guidance, a source of nourishment for all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
From the prophet himself to the most ordinary individual.
Yeah.
And, the fact that this very simple act of recitation was witnessed and recorded, it tells us how deeply embedded the Qur'an was in the fabric of their lives. It
Yeah.
wasn't, confined to mosques or to, formal gatherings. It flowed through their homes, their conversations, It was part of their very being.
And Hadith 3972, it kind of reinforces this point. It, features Salama, one of the Prophet's wives,
Right.
confirming that he did indeed recite the verse in that specific way.
It's a powerful testament to the role of women, wouldn't you say, in preserving and transmitting, the Qur'an's message. Salama, like many other women in the Prophet's household, in that community, they were witnesses to the revelation. They were guardians of this tradition and a
Yeah.
source of knowledge and guidance.
These hadiths, they provide this glimpse, right, into this vibrant, intellectual and spiritual atmosphere that surrounded the Prophet, where, learning and reflection were highly valued, and where men and women alike were engaged in the process of understanding, really embodying the Qur'an's message.
It's an inspiring legacy.
It is.
One that invites us to approach the Qur'an, with the same reverence, that same curiosity, that same open-heartedness.
Yeah.
And I, for one, am eager to continue this exploration
Me too.
and see where these echoes of Sims lead us next.
Absolutely. As we, go deeper into these hadiths,
Yeah.
what really strikes me is the effort that was taken
Right.
to ensure that the Qur'an was transmitted accurately.
Yeah.
It wasn't just about memorizing the
Yeah.
word. It was about understanding the nuances,
Yeah.
the pronunciation, the context
But-
in which they were revealed.
Like they were entrusted with this precious jewel,
Yeah.
and they were determined to polish every facet to make sure that its brilliance, shone through
Yeah.
for generations to come.
Exactly.
It was more than just rote memorization.
Yeah.
It was a deep engagement with the text.
Yeah.
A real desire to understand it and to
Yeah.
embody its message.
Absolutely. And take, for example, Hadith 3973.
Okay.
Ubay ibn Ka'b, he recounts how the Prophet would begin his prayers with
Right.
a personal supplication.
Okay.
And it included this phrase about Moses and his companion.
Okay.
And this hadith, it not only highlights the Prophet's humility,
Yeah.
but it also sheds light on how certain verses were understood
Right.
and applied.
Yeah.
It's really like this glimpse
Yeah.
into the Prophet's own spiritual practice.
Yeah.
Showing how he connected these verses to his own life.
Right.
And how the Qur'an was, just interwoven into his existence.
It's like, we're peeking through a window
Yeah.
into his heart,
Yeah.
seeing that sincerity and the depth of his connection to the divine.
Yeah.
It really humanizes him. What do you say?
Okay.
It shows that even as the messenger of God,
Yeah.
he approached his faith with humility,
Yeah.
with a deep personal connection.
And it reminds us that the Qur'an,
Yeah.
it isn't just this set of rules or
It's-
doctrines, it's a source of guidance and
Yeah.
inspiration,
Yeah.
for navigating the complexities of life.
Right. It's a guide for our own hearts and minds.
Exactly.
Speaking of Ubay ibn Ka'b,
Yeah.
he pops up again in Hadith 3974.
Okay.
This time providing some insight into the pronunciation of the verse. Thou hast received full excuse from me, min laduni. We won't, get too deep into the weeds
Sure.
of pronunciation here, but
Sure.
this detail, it really shows just how carefully these early scholars
Yeah.
treated every aspect of the Qur'an.
Yeah, they were very meticulous
Yeah.
in their preservation efforts.
Yeah.
They understood that even seemingly minor details
Right.
could carry, significant meaning.
Yeah.
And they recognized that the Qur'an wasn't just about the words themselves,
Yeah.
but about how those words were conveyed,
Right.
how they sounded,
Yeah.
how they resonated in the heart.
It's this attention to detail.
Yeah.
That's just, it's almost unimaginable today.
Yeah.
In our fast-paced world.
Yeah.
They really understood
Yeah.
that the Quran wasn't just, a text to be consumed.
Right.
It was a treasure
Yeah.
to be cherished,
Mm-hmm.
a source of living wisdom
Mm-hmm.
to be passed down. This commitment to accuracy.
Yeah.
It's further emphasized, I think, in Hadith 3975,
Okay.
where Ubay ibn Ka'b guides Abdullah ibn Abbasan
Right.
on the pronunciation of the phrase, in a spring of murky water, fi aynin hamiyatin.
Okay.
And he's emphasizing this short vowel sound after the ek.
Yeah. So these might seem like minute details to us,
Yeah.
but they really demonstrate the reverence these individuals had for the Qur'an,
Yeah.
treating every syllable as if it were this precious gem.
It's inspiring to see that level of dedication.
It is.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It reminds us that our faith,
Mhm.
it shouldn't be something that we approach casually
Yeah.
or superficially.
Right.
It deserves, our time,
Mhm.
our attention,
Yeah.
our deep contemplation.
And this dedication to preserving the Quran, it really connects with that Islamic principle of Ihsan,
Right.
this pursuit of excellence in all things.
Ihsan it's about striving to do things
Yeah.
to the best of our ability, right? With
Yeah.
sincerity,
Yeah.
with a deep sense of responsibility.
It's about going above and beyond, right?
Right.
Not just doing the bare minimum,
Yeah.
but really infusing every action
Yeah.
with a sense of mindfulness and devotion.
It's about excellence as a way of life, right?
It is.
It's a reflection of our love for God
Mhm.
and our desire to please him
Yeah,
in everything that we do.
exactly.
And that's precisely what we see
Yeah.
reflected in these hadiths
Mm.
about the preservation of the Quranic readings.
Yeah.
These individuals, they weren't just, going through the motions.
Right.
They were driven by a deep sense of purpose,
Mm-hmm.
a profound understanding
Yeah.
of the sacredness of their task.
They understood that what they were doing wasn't just for them.
Right.
It was for generations to come. They were really laying the foundation
Mhm.
for this vibrant tradition of Quranic scholarship.
Right, which continues to thrive today.
It does.
And these hadiths, they also underscore, the importance of seeking knowledge.
Yeah.
Another cornerstone of Islamic teachings.
Absolutely.
It wasn't enough to just accept what they heard.
Right.
They actively sought to understand,
Yeah.
to question,
To verify.
right?
Yeah.
It was this dynamic process of learning and discovery,
Yeah.
one that challenged them to constantly deepen their understanding and expand their perspectives.
And this thirst for knowledge, it wasn't limited to simply memorizing the Quran, right?
Right.
It encompassed understanding the historical context, the nuances of the language,
Right.
and really all the different interpretations that
Yeah.
emerged over time.
It's like they were saying, don't just take our word for it,
Right. Yeah.
investigate,
Yeah.
explore,
Yeah.
and come to your own understanding.
And that spirit of inquiry,
Yeah.
I find so inspiring.
It is.
It reminds us that faith shouldn't be just blind acceptance.
Right.
It should be this ongoing journey
Uh-huh.
of exploration and discovery.
A journey that's enriched by dialogue and discussion,
Yeah.
by engaging with those different perspectives
Right.
and those different interpretations,
That's right.
and recognizing that the Quran can speak to us in different ways, depending on our life experiences, our
Yep.
background,
Right.
individual understanding.
And speaking of different perspectives,
Yeah.
Hadith 3976, it brings us back to the theme of paradise.
Okay.
It describes the radiant beauty
Yeah.
of paradise,
Mm-hmm.
and it mentions how Abu Bakr and Umar,
Right.
two of the Prophet's closest companions, will
Yeah.
be among its inhabitants.
It's this glimpse into,
Yeah.
the rewards that are
Uh-huh.
promised to those who live a righteous life.
Right.
And it also, subtly kind of highlights the respect and the reverence that was given to the Prophet's companions, and particularly, Abu Bakr and Umar, who
Right.
played such vital roles
Yeah.
in the development of Islam.
Their contributions to
Yeah.
the preservation and transmission of the Quran
Yeah.
and Islamic teachings,
Yeah,
they're immeasurable.
they are.
They were living embodiments of the faith.
Mhm.
Their actions, their words serving as guides
Yeah.
for those who followed in their footsteps.
Their legacy continues to inspire,
Yeah.
Muslims all around the world,
Right.
reminding us of the importance of piety, of service,
Mm.
and that unwavering commitment to the truth.
Now let's shift our focus to Hadith 3977,
Okay.
which addresses a question
Hmm.
about this figure of Saba
Yeah.
that's mentioned in the Quran.
Right.
And the Prophet, he clarifies that Saba was not a land,
Okay.
nor was it a woman,
Mm.
but it was a man
Okay.
who fathered 10 children.
Interesting.
This hadith is particularly interesting, I think,
Yeah.
because it sheds light on how the prophet responded to questions
Yeah.
about, ambiguous references
Right.
in the Quran.
Yeah.
He provided context.
Yeah.
He provided clarification, ensuring that his companions had a proper understanding of the text,
Right.
dispelling any misconceptions or any misinterpretations that might arise.
It's a testament to his role, as a teacher,
Right.
as a guide,
Yeah.
patiently explaining, clarifying the intricacies of
Yeah.
the Qur'an's message.
He didn't shy away from difficult questions.
I didn't.
He embraced them,
Yeah. Yeah.
as opportunities to really deepen understanding
Yeah.
and to foster a culture of learning
Yeah.
within the community.
He recognized that the Qur'an wasn't meant to be this source of confusion or ambiguity. It
Right.
was meant to be a source of guidance.
Yeah.
And he really took that responsibility seriously.
And this commitment to clarity,
Yeah.
it's further exemplified, I think, in Hadith 3978,
Okay.
where the prophet, while discussing, the coming down of revelation, he quotes a very specific verse.
Okay.
And this hadith not only highlights, the importance of context,
Right.
but it also emphasizes how the prophet used the Quran
Yeah.
to address, real life anxieties
Yeah.
and fears. He wasn't just delivering these abstract sermons.
Yeah.
He was connecting the Quran's teachings to the everyday experiences of his companions.
Yeah.
Providing solace,
Right.
providing guidance,
Yeah.
providing a sense of hope
Mm.
in times of uncertainty.
He understood that the Quran wasn't just this, collection of verses. It was this living, breathing source of
Yeah.
wisdom, a balm for the soul.
Yeah.
A guide for navigating life's challenges.
It's like he was saying,
Yeah.
here's how this verse applies to your situation.
Yeah.
Here's how it can provide you with comfort and strength.
Exactly.
Now let's delve into a hadith.
Okay.
That offers a unique perspective, I think, on the transmission of the Quran.
Okay.
Hadith 3979. It features Salama,
Right.
the prophet's wife.
Yeah.
And she's recounting how he recited a specific verse.
And this hadith is particularly valuable because
Yeah.
it comes from a woman's perspective.
Right.
It highlights the role that women played
Yeah.
in preserving and transmitting the Qur'an's message.
It challenges that notion that women were merely passive recipients of knowledge in the early Muslim community.
Right. Yeah.
They were active participants.
They were witnesses to revelation,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they were guardians of the tradition.
Absolutely.
Their voices, their perspectives, they're woven into the fabric of Islamic history.
Salama, she was known for her intelligence,
Yeah.
for her piety.
Mm-hmm.
And her testimony, it holds significant weight
Yeah.
in Islamic scholarship.
And her presence in these hadiths really underscores the fact that the preservation and transmission of the Qur'an, it wasn't solely a male endeavor.
Right.
It was a collective effort.
It was.
One that involved, both men and women working together
Yeah.
to safeguard this sacred text.
Yeah, it reminds us that the Quran is a source of guidance and inspiration for all,
Right.
regardless of gender,
Yeah.
social status,
Yeah.
cultural background.
It's a message that transcends those boundaries.
It does, speaking to the hearts and minds
Yeah.
of all who approach it with sincerity
Yeah.
and with an open mind.
And it's important to note that women weren't just passive transmitters. They were also active learners and scholars. They engaged in discussions, they debated interpretations, and they really contributed to this rich tapestry of Quranic understanding. Their contributions are invaluable, and their voices deserve to be heard and honored.
Now let's turn our attention to Hadith 3980,
Okay.
which features Aisha,
Right.
another one of the Prophet's wives,
Yeah.
recalling how he recited the phrase, "There is for him rest and satisfaction, farhun wa rayhan," and like Salama, Aisha, known for her sharp memory and her deep understanding of Islamic teachings,
Yeah.
was a valuable source
Yeah.
of knowledge and guidance. for that early community.
Absolutely.
Her presence in these hadiths.
Yeah.
It further emphasizes, the significant role
Yeah.
that women played in shaping that early Muslim community and preserving the legacy of the Prophet's teachings.
These hadiths, they don't just offer insights into, into the recitation.
Right.
But they provide these glimpses into, the lives and the contributions of these remarkable women. And they really challenge that misconception, right?
Right.
That women were relegated to like the sidelines of religious life.
They were active.
Yeah.
Participants. They were shaping the intellectual and spiritual landscape of that early community.
They weren't just wives and mothers.
Right.
They were scholars, they were teachers, they were leaders in their own right.
And their stories, they serve as an inspiration, reminding us that faith is this journey that we can all embark on, regardless of our gender or our social standing.
It's a journey of seeking knowledge,
right?
Deepening our understanding and really striving to embody the Qur'an's teachings in our daily lives.
Now let's move on to Hadith 3981, which features Sufyan bi Yala.
Okay.
And he's recalling how he heard the Prophet recite the verse, "They will cry, O Malik," pronouncing the name Malik without shortening it.
Interesting.
And while this might seem like, a minor detail, this hadith highlights the importance of pronunciation and how even subtle variations could convey, different meanings or different nuances.
It's a reminder that the Quran wasn't just about the words themselves, but about the way that those words were delivered, the emphasis, the intonation, pauses,
the silences. Right. It was an art form.
It was a symphony of sounds that carried not only meaning, but also emotion and spiritual resonance.
And speaking of impactful recitation, Hadith 3982. It features Abdullah ibn Masud, recalling how the Prophet made him read the verse, "It is I who give all sustenance, Lord of power, steadfast, forever."
Wow.
This hadith, it not only highlights, the Prophet's role as a teacher, but it also emphasizes the importance of understanding. The meaning behind the words.
Yeah, it wasn't just about reciting the verses beautifully. It was about internalizing that message and living by those principles.
The Prophet wasn't just interested in producing, technically proficient reciters.
Yeah.
He wanted to cultivate individuals who understood the Quran's message and who were committed to embodying its teachings in their daily lives.
Yeah.
He understood that true transformation came not just from memorization, but from allowing the Quran's wisdom to penetrate the heart and to guide, one's actions.
And Abdullah ibn Masud, he appears again in Hadith 3983, sharing how the Prophet used to recite the verse, "Is there any that will receive admonition?" Mudakir. And he would recite it with a specific emphasis on the pronunciation of the word mudakir. So these hadiths, they're like the previous ones about, pronunciation. They emphasize this meticulous attention that was given to preserving the authenticity of the recitation.
It wasn't simply about, getting the words right. It was about capturing the spirit, the essence, the nuances of the divine revelation as it was conveyed, through the Prophet's own voice.
It speaks to the deep reverence they had for the Qur'an. Treating every detail with the utmost care, ensuring that message was transmitted with accuracy, but also, with spiritual depth.
They understood that the Qur'an wasn't, just a text. It was this living, breathing presence, a source of divine guidance, a balm for the soul. And they treated it with the respect and reverence that it deserved.
Absolutely.
Now let's move on to Hadith 3984, which features Jabir ibn Abdullah, and he's recounting how he saw the Prophet reading the verse, "Does he think that his wealth would make him last forever?"
Okay.
This hadith, I think, it offers a glimpse
Yeah.
into the prophet's own engagement with the
Yeah.
Quran. You
Yeah.
know, it wasn't something that he just preached to others.
Mm-hmm.
He personally reflected upon
Yeah.
these verses,
Mm-hmm.
and he sought guidance
Yeah.
from its teachings.
Yeah.
You know, it was this constant companion.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a source of inspiration and solace in his own life.
It's this beautiful reminder that the Qur'an is a source of wisdom and guidance for all, you know?
Yeah.
Regardless of their status or position, whether you're a prophet, a scholar, an ordinary individual,
Right.
the Qur'an offers this timeless wisdom
Yeah.
that can illuminate our path
Mm-hmm.
and guide us towards, more meaningful, more
Yeah.
fulfilling lives.
And this theme of personal reflection, I think it's further emphasized in Hadith 3985,
Okay.
where Abu Kilaba
Mm-hmm.
recounts how the prophet made a man read specific verses
Okay.
about the day of judgment.
And this hadith, it serves as this powerful reminder, you
Yeah.
know, of the accountability that we
Yeah.
all face,
Yeah.
on that day. And really the importance of living a righteous life,
Right.
one that's aligned with God's will
Mm-hmm.
and guided by the Quran's teachings.
It's a call to action,
It is.
right?
Yeah.
It's urging us to move beyond that intellectual understanding
Yeah.
and to embrace the transformative power of the Quran.
I think these hadiths about,
Yeah.
the prophet's own engagement with the Quran and
Mhm.
his guidance to others,
Mm.
they offer such profound lessons
Yeah.
for all of us.
Right.
They remind us that the Quran isn't simply a book to be read.
Right.
It's this living word
Mhm.
that's meant to be reflected on,
Yeah.
understood,
Yeah.
and applied to
Yeah.
our lives.
Right. It's that source
Yeah.
of wisdom
Yeah.
and guidance
Yeah.
and inspiration.
Yeah.
And its teachings, they're just as relevant today
Yeah.
as they were centuries ago.
And as we continue to, explore these hadiths, we're going to encounter even more examples
Right.
of how the Quran was lived and breathed in that early
Mhm.
community,
Mhm.
how it shaped their understanding of the world,
Yeah.
and really how it continues to guide and inspire us today. It's just amazing how these hadiths, they really transport us back
Yeah.
to a time when the Quran was just so present in people's lives.
Right. It wasn't just a book on the shelf.
It wasn't, yeah.
It was a source of guidance, of comfort, of inspiration,
Yeah.
woven into the fabric of their lives.
It really was.
And it's that lived experience
Right.
that shines through
Right.
in these hadiths.
Absolutely.
We were talking a lot about these multiple readings of the Quran.
Yeah.
And Hadith 3986 really, really gets into some specific details
Okay.
about the pronunciation
Mhm.
of a particular verse.
Right.
It even mentions
Yeah.
different scholars who had slightly different ways
Mhm.
of reciting it.
Yeah.
And it's not presented as a problem.
Right.
It's presented as a point of discussion.
It's this perfect example of
Yeah.
how the oral tradition just embraced that diversity.
Yeah.
The goal wasn't to find this one right way.
Right.
It was to acknowledge
Yeah.
the validity
Mhm.
of multiple approaches,
Right.
as long as they maintain that integrity of the message.
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
But it's like different musicians,
Mm-hmm.
interpreting the same piece of music.
Right.
They might emphasize different notes, add their own flourishes,
Yeah.
but the essence of the composition
Yeah.
remains intact.
I love that. That's a fantastic analogy.
And this acceptance
Mm.
of multiple readings, I think, it speaks to the flexibility and
Yeah.
the dynamism of the Arabic language itself.
Right. It's a language that's capable of
Hmm.
conveying incredibly subtle
Right.
shades of meaning
Yeah.
just through these variations in pronunciation and emphasis.
It's like a kaleidoscope, isn't it?
It is.
Just one little turn
Yeah.
can create this whole new pattern,
Mhm.
a new perspective,
Yeah.
a new way of seeing the same elements.
Exactly.
Speaking of subtle variations, hadiths 3987 and 39888,
Okay.
they mention the angels, the Jibril and Mikal,
Right.
and how the prophet pronounced their names with particular emphasis.
So these hadiths, they might seem like they're focused on these tiny little details,
Yeah.
but they really underscore that
Yeah.
reverence that these individuals had
Yeah.
to the Quran.
Right.
It wasn't It wasn't just the message that mattered. It
Yeah.
was the way that that message was delivered.
Yeah.
The sounds, the inflections, the very breath of the prophet.
It was about, preserving the authenticity of
Yeah.
the experience,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Capturing not just the words, but the spirit
Mm.
in which they were conveyed.
Exactly.
Speaking of authenticity, Hadith 3989,
Okay.
it delves into this history
Hmm.
of how a particular phrase
Mm-hmm.
in Surah Fatiha, the opening chapter
Yeah.
of the Qur'an, was recited.
Right.
And it mentions how this phrase, Maliki Yarmiddin,
Mm-hmm.
Master of the Day of Judgment, was initially read with a specific pronunciation
Right.
that later evolved.
So this hadith, it offers this fascinating window
It does.
into the evolution of Qur'anic recitation.
Yeah.
And it highlights the role of scholars,
Well-
in studying and documenting these variations.
Right. It wasn't static.
That wasn't
It was a living, breathing process.
Yeah. Yeah.
Constantly being refined
Mm-hmm.
and reinterpreted
Yeah.
in light of new insights and
Yeah.
new understandings.
It reminds us that the way that
Yeah.
we recite the Qur'an today,
Yeah.
it's really the culmination of centuries of scholarship, of debate, and meticulous preservation.
In Hadith 3990, it reinforces this beautifully.
It does.
Salama, the Prophet's wife,
Right.
she recounts how he used to recite Surah Fatiha,
Mm-hmm.
breaking it down into these individual verses,
Yeah.
almost like a teacher, guiding his students
Yeah.
through a complex text.
It highlights that importance of
Yeah.
understanding that structure, that
Yeah.
rhythm
Yeah.
of the Qur'an, right?
Yeah.
How each verse
Yeah.
contributes to that overall message.
It's not just, a string of words.
Uh-huh.
It's this carefully constructed symphony,
It is.
right?
Yeah.
Each element playing its part in creating something
Yeah.
that's harmonious and
Yeah.
impactful.
Now let's shift gears just for a moment
Uh-huh.
and talk about Hadith 3991,
Okay.
where the Prophet describes the sun setting
Uh-huh.
in a spring of warm water.
That imagery, it immediately caught my attention
bet.
because it's not literal,
Right.
but it's so evocative.
It is.
What do you make of this kind of metaphorical language
Mhm.
that's used in the Quran?
I think it speaks to the Quran's ability to transcend these literal interpretations.
Right.
And to invite us into like this realm of deeper contemplation. You
Yeah.
know, it's not always about
Yeah.
concrete facts
Right.
or scientific explanations.
Right.
Sometimes it's about using like imagery
Yeah.
and symbolism
Yeah.
to awaken our hearts and minds
Mhm.
to this greater reality.
It's like poetry, isn't it?
It is.
It uses language
Yeah.
to evoke emotions, to paint these pictures in our minds, to nudge us beyond,
Yeah.
the limits of our everyday understanding.
Exactly.
And speaking of pushing beyond those limits,
Okay.
Hadith 3992, it describes the prophet
Mhm.
being asked about, the greatest verse in the Quran.
Right.
And his response,
Yeah.
it focuses on a verse that emphasizes
Mhm.
God's, unique attributes,
Yeah.
reminding us that at the heart of Islam
Mm-hmm.
lies this deep reverence
Yeah.
for the divine.
It's a reminder
Right.
that our understanding of God is always limited.
Yeah.
It's always evolving. Always reaching towards
Yeah.
this truth
Yeah.
that we can never fully grasp.
It's a call to humility, isn't it?
It is.
It's this acknowledgement that our human language
yeah.
and our concepts, they can only partially encompass the vastness and the mystery of the divine.
Absolutely.
Now, I'd like to explore a couple of hadiths
Okay.
that I think showcase these different readings of
Yeah.
specific verses.
Okay.
Hadiths 3993 and 3994.
Mm-hmm.
They both focus on a verse
Okay.
from the story of Joseph
Right.
in the Quran. But they present
Yeah.
like these slightly different readings,
Okay.
highlighting those subtle variations,
Yeah.
that existed
Right.
within that oral tradition.
And these variations, they remind us that the
Right.
Quran wasn't meant to be this
Right.
rigid,
Yeah.
inflexible text. It was meant to be this living, breathing source of guidance that could be, understood and appreciated in different ways.
It's like a multifaceted gem, right?
It is.
Each each facet
Yeah.
reflecting, a different aspect of
Yeah.
its beauty, a different shade of its meaning.
And these different readings, rather than creating confusion,
Right.
they enriched the understanding of the Quran.
Yeah.
They added these layers of nuance,
Yeah.
of interpretation,
Right.
and really invited people to engage with the text on this deeper level.
It's like a tapestry
Yeah.
woven from these multiple threads. Each thread contributing
Yeah.
to the overall richness and complexity of the design. Hadiths 3995 and 3996, they provide
Okay.
another example of this with slightly different wordings for a verse
Okay.
about entering a gate with humility.
Yeah, these subtle variations, they might not change that fundamental meaning,
Right.
but they highlight
Yeah.
the importance of preserving these different ways
Yeah.
in which the Quran was recited and understood,
Right.
in that early community.
You were like different brushstrokes, right?
Yeah.
Contributing to this masterpiece, each one adding its own
Yeah.
unique touch to the composition. And finally, Hadith 39997.
Okay.
It describes how the revelation came down to the prophet, and he recited a particular verse
Right.
with a specific pronunciation, emphasizing that direct link,
Yeah.
between that divine message and the human messenger.
It's this powerful reminder
Yeah.
that the Quran isn't just a collection of words.
Right.
It's this divine revelation
Yeah.
transmitted through a human being
Yeah.
carrying the weight of that divine encounter.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
into Sunan Abu Dawud, Book 25, Dialects and Readings of the Qur'an, what key takeaways would you leave our listeners with?
I think the most important takeaway is that profound respect and reverence that the early Muslims had for the Quran.
Yeah.
They understood the weight of that responsibility that they carried in preserving this message, for future generations.
Yeah.
They meticulously documented, those different readings, the pronunciations, the interpretations,
Right.
and they did that not to create confusion, but to enrich, our understanding and appreciation of this divine text.
They recognized that it wasn't just a book to be read.
Right.
It was this living tradition to be embraced, to be studied, and to be passed down
Absolutely.
through the generations.
And it's also crucial to remember that these hadiths offer us this glimpse, into this time when the Quran was, more than just a book. They turned to it for guidance, for comfort, for inspiration.
Yeah.
And they saw its teachings reflected in the events of their lives.
Right.
It wasn't just this religious text.
Right.
It was a guidebook for life.
Yeah.
A source of wisdom that really just permeated every aspect of their existence.
Yeah. So as we conclude, this exploration, I encourage our listeners to consider how these different readings can enhance our own understanding and our appreciation of the Quran today.
Absolutely.
How can we engage with this text
Yeah.
in a way that honors its rich history,
Yeah.
and its diverse interpretations while remaining true to its core message?
Yeah. How can we allow, its wisdom to illuminate our lives, to guide our actions, and to inspire us to become, the best versions of ourselves?
That's a powerful question.
It is.
To ponder.
Yeah.
We hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and inspired you to delve deeper into the fascinating world of Quranic studies.
Absolutely.
Until next time, may the echoes of Ihsan continue to resonate within us all.